Right behind us right now on the launch pad is a SpaceX rocket full of Starlink satellites.
Perfect.
So what a perfect place to do this video.
It couldn't get more perfect than this.
It could. We want to do a video on Starlink, but mainly the service plans that Starlink has to offer, the ones that most RVers would be interested in. We figured what a great place to start the Starlink video. We're literally in Cape Canaveral, Florida right now. We've been here for about 5 weeks. Right behind us right now on the launch pad is a SpaceX rocket full of Starlink satellites.
Perfect.
So what a perfect place to do this video.
It couldn't get more perfect than this.
It couldn't. We've watched 3 or 4 launches already, and they've all been amazing. So great place to do a Starlink video.
For sure.
When it comes to Starlink, there's an awful lot we can talk about, but I really want to concentrate on are the service plans, and particularly the 2 service plans that most RVers are going to be interested in. The first one is the residential plan, and there's an add-on to that called Portability, which allows you to use this plan as you travel. And there's another plan called Starlink for RVs. Now, before we get into these plans, let's talk a little bit about some of your antenna options you have, because some of these antennas will only work on a particular plan. Now, your first option is the standard antenna. This is the option currently as of today. It's the $599 is what you get when you get the $599 package from Starlink. This antenna has a 100-degree field of view. Now, what that means is when it's looking out into the sky for satellite, it can look, basically left to right all around 100 degrees. This antenna works with both service plans, the residential and the RV plan as well. And again, this is as of today, $599. The next antenna is called the standard high performance antenna. This is strictly for a residential plan. Now, this antenna has a 140-degree field of view, so it's able to look out into the sky or more of the sky for satellites, and it's supposedly faster as well. Now, the big downside to this antenna is $2,500. So most people probably stay away from this antenna unless you really need the performance. The third antenna is the flat high performance antenna, and this is one of their newer antennas, and this is only used for the RV plan. Now, this antenna, it doesn't have any motors in it like the other antennas. The other antennas will actually, when you set them up, it will track satellites and move around. This one is made to sit flat on top of a roof, like an RV roof or the top of a boat. Again, this antenna is only used for the RV plan. And again, this antenna is also $2,500. So it's a pretty expensive investment. So most people will end up going with the standard dish or the standard antenna for $599. Now, there's a couple ways to mount the standard antenna or the standard high performance antenna. They come with, this is the base for the standard antenna, and basically antenna would just stick into this base, and this base you can stick out on the ground somewhere, just in a field with a clear line of sight to the sky. Couple things about this. I personally don't like this approach, although I have used it in the past. I just don't like having something that cost me $600 sitting out in the field somewhere. It's too easy for maybe a maintenance worker to run over my cable with a lawnmower, somebody backing up an RV to, hit it, knock it over and break it. And, it's just easier for somebody to mess with. I prefer not to do it this way. However, if I'm backed up underneath a tree, I may have to do it this way so it gives me the ability to move it around and get a clear line of sight to the sky. The way we prefer to do it is we use, basically it's a flagpole mounted to our ladder on the back of the RV. So our antenna is on top of a flagpole which is attached to the ladder. And what this does for us is it gets the antenna up off the ground, it gets it above everything on the roof of our RV, so above all the obstacles, so hopefully it has a clear line of sight to the sky. We can run the cable straight through the back of the ramp and into the office, so everything's pretty much intact inside. Now the downside to this is if we happen to go to a site with a tree towards the back end of our RV, I really can't use this because I'm fixed to a fixed location on the RV. I can't move it around. In that case, then I would have to use the stand and move the antenna out on the stand in a field somewhere. So those are the 3 antennas. Again, you have a standard dish, the standard antenna for $5.99. You have a standard high performance antenna used with residential, or again, you could use a standard one with residential as well. And then for the RVing, you have a flat high performance antenna strictly for the RV plan, or you could use a standard antenna with that as well. So those are your options. The first service plan I want to talk about is the Starlink residential plan, more specifically the residential plan plus portability. Now, what is this residential plan? It's kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's a service address. When you sign up for Starlink, you're going to enter in an address, and that is your service address. That's tied to your account. So as long as you are using Starlink at that address, and it's a little bit more forgiving than that. It's about a 15-mile circle, but as long as you're within that area, you are guaranteed priority access to the network, and you're also allowed up to 1 terabyte of data per billing cycle. That's an awful lot of data. We've never even come close to something like that. So that's the residential plan. Now you might be thinking, what good does this do me as an RVer? That's where the portability option comes in. Now the residential plan is $110 a month. The portability option is $25 a month. So for a total of $135 a month, you now have priority access while you're at your service address, and you also have the ability to start traveling with your Starlink. You know, what happens as you start traveling? As soon as you leave your service address, you are no longer guaranteed priority access. As a matter of fact, you're really not even guaranteed access at all. However, what we've been seeing and what we've been hearing from everybody else is what usually happens is you're just throttled back, and that's really honestly about it. So especially if you go to another cell that's at capacity and it's peak time, everybody's using it, you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to be throttled back. We've never had an instance where we didn't have access at all. So that's the portability plan. Now the nice thing with the portability plan is you can turn it on and off as needed. So if you're home for 5 or 6 months and then you want to go travel, it's just before you travel, before you leave your service area, turn on portability, do your traveling. Once you come back, you can turn it off again and save $25 a month. Now the other nice thing I like about this option, the residential plan plus portability, is as long as there's availability, I can change my service address as I travel. So what does that really mean? Why would I want to do something like that? If you remember, when you're at your service address, you're guaranteed priority access to the network. As soon as you leave your service address, you're really not even guaranteed network access, and you're more than likely going to be throttled back. So if I go to another location and I'm there for a while, maybe I'm there for a month or something like that, as long as they have access or availability in that cell, I can change my service address to that cell. Now, instead of being throttled back, I am now guaranteed priority access while I'm in that new service location or my new service address. Now, there's a downside to this, is when I get back home again, that cell may be at capacity now and I can't get my old service address back. So that is something to be aware of. But for an average or really a full-time RVer where you don't have a home, you may not have a home base, that is one option to change your service address as you travel. Now currently, one issue with the residential plan, depending on your location, is you may be put on a wait list. A lot of these cells are at capacity. Starlink is still, sending up satellites and still building out the network. If you happen to be in a location that is at capacity and you try to order Starlink, they may put you on a wait list, and it could be months or even a year or two before you can actually get your residential access. So there is a way around this. I'll show you in just a little bit, but just be aware of that. Depending on your location, you may not even be able to get the residential plan. Now there is something I do want to show you with the residential service plan. If you happen to be in a location where the cell is at capacity, you could be put on a waiting list when you try to order Starlink. If there's not any room for you, you will be on a waiting list. And this could be months or even up to a year. So there is a way around this currently today. I want to show you this. Now I also want you to be aware things may change in the future, but as of today, you can enter in a service address but have your equipment shipped somewhere else. I just want to show you how this would work and why this would benefit you and hopefully keep you off the waiting list if that's what you want. You can see here we're on the Starlink website. What we're going to do is we're going to pretend like we want residential service. We need to look for availability first. We're going to click on the availability, and you can see here all the light blue areas is where availability. There's availability for Starlink. So we're just going to zoom in on, it looks like Key West, Florida has availability. So let's just zoom in on that to verify. So we can see here Key West does have availability. So we can actually use this as our service address in this example. Now that we know that, I can switch over to Google Maps. And from here, what we're going to do is to zoom in on Key West, Florida. Now that we're zoomed in on Key West, all we have to do is place a pin on the map. And it can just be anywhere. It doesn't have to be a street address, just anywhere that's available. Now what you can see is as soon as we put a pin on the map, on the bottom of the page, the latitude and longitude coordinates of that pin showed up. So now all we have to do is click on the lat-lon coordinates. And now this is the important part. On the left-hand side, you can see there's what's called a Google Plus code. It's the same thing as the latitude and longitude, but it's their code, the way they do it. So all we want to do is to copy this code. We'll copy the plus code. You can see it's copied to our clipboard. Now what we can do is go back to our Starlink page. We'll click on residential. And now down here in the service address, we can just paste that new code into our service address. Once this code is in here, we'll click on order now. And while it's searching, what's going to happen is if there's availability at this address, you will be allowed to order your Starlink hardware and start an account. If not, you would be placed on a waiting list. As you can see here, we do have availability. So if I wanted to create an account, I could just go from here, enter in my username and all my information, and I would be able to create an account. Now, again, there's a couple things to be aware of with this. As of today, you can do it this way. You're kind of bypassing the residential restriction up front, but this will keep you off the waiting list. Now, once you have your hardware and you set up your account, you will have to add portability, because if you are outside of that little area, in this particular case, Key West, it's not going to work until you have portability activated. So you will have to have another means of getting onto the internet in order to activate portability. And I'm assuming you do that if you're ordering Starlink from the internet anyways. Now I have heard rumors that Starlink might be kind of fixing this loophole where they will only ship to your service address. So you will have to check that if this is something that you're going to do. Things change daily, and there's no contracts with Starlink, so that is a possibility. But this is one way. If you don't want the RV plan, you do want a residential plan, you can do it this way, and then maybe hopefully just keep checking back and see if the real service address you want does eventually get availability. Then you can update your address to that at some point in time. But at least in the meantime, you will have Starlink. If you find this type of information helpful, please subscribe to our channel and make sure you hit the like button as well. It really helps us out, and it doesn't cost you a thing. The next plan is the Starlink for RVs plan. Now currently this plan is $135 a month. It's a lot like the residential plan plus portability. However, with just the portability always enabled, and you don't have a service address as well. Now the RV plan, though, you are always going to be second tier. You're never going to have priority access to the internet or to the network. And if you go into an at capacity cell, you're most likely going to get throttled back and have slower internet speeds. Now, the nice thing with this, though, is you can pause this or cancel it basically anytime you want. So if you travel 2 or 3 months a year, you can start it up, activate it, use it. When you get back home, you can turn it off again as well. So it can actually save you quite a bit of money. Also, this is the only plan that works with the flat high performance antenna, and this is the antenna you have to have if you want in motion internet access. So if you're driving down the road and you have to have internet access, you're gonna have to use this plan with the flat high performance antenna. So this is the Starlink for RVs plan. Now that you have an understanding of the two service plans, remember the residential plus portability gives you priority access while you're at your service address and in that vicinity, but the Starlink for RV plan also allows you to cancel it at any time, so when you're not traveling, you're allowed to save money. So depending on the type of RVer you are is really what's going to determine what plan you want to have. So let's look at some of the different types of RVers, how they travel, and figure out which plan is probably going to be best for them. So let's talk about full-timers. Now, as a full-timer, you probably need internet access all year round, and you don't need the ability to pause it. Usually in this case, residential plus portability is the best option. Now, you can still pause the portability part of it if you're not traveling to save a little bit of money, and it also gives you priority access when you're in your own service address location. So residential plus portability is usually best if you plan on using Starlink year round, if you want to be guaranteed priority access, and if you want the ability to pause or cancel the portability part of the plan when it's not needed. Or if you move slow enough that you can actually change your service address as you move, thus giving you priority access as you're traveling. Now, for part-time RVers, usually they have a home base and they only need Starlink as they're traveling. In this case, the Starlink for RV is usually the best plan. Or if you need in-motion access to the internet, you're going to have to order the flat high-performance antenna with the Starlink for RV plan as well. Now, the nice thing as a part-time traveler or part-timers, the Starlink for RV plan allows you to cancel it or pause it at any time, thus saving you money when you're not traveling. But it also means that you are going to always be throttled back or your second tier as you're traveling as well. So the Starlink for RV plan is best for in-motion usage. This is the only plan you can have if you need internet access as you're traveling, or if you want the ability to cancel or pause a plan when it's not being used. Again, you're going to be deprioritized, so you will always be basically throttled back as well. Or the big thing for most part-time travelers is you're going to have a different internet provider while you're at home, and you only need Starlink as you're traveling. Starlink for RVs is probably the best option for you. The next type of RVer is a seasonal RVer. Now, if you're a part-time seasonal RVer and you don't need Starlink year-round, Starlink for RVs is probably your best choice. It really just comes down to, do you need priority access, or are you more concerned with the ability to pause your service when it's not needed? Usually the case is Starlink for RVs is your best choice. If you need Starlink year-round and you only travel a couple times a year, the residential plan might be the one for you. It might be your best fit, and you may not even need the portability option as well. Now remember, this gives you priority access to the network. So if you do go to like a popular snowbird location, if that is your service address, you're guaranteed priority access. Now, something to be aware of though, if you currently have your home address, let's say, as your service address, you go to another location more than 2 months, and you're in that same location for more than 2 months, Starlink has the option to update your service address to that new location. So what this really means though is when you go back home, that may not be your service address again, and now you're not your second tier, you're not priority access. So that is something to be aware of if you go somewhere and stay in one location for more than 2 months. Now there is another option. You can have both services. So if you rely on Starlink at home, you can have Starlink residential for your house, and as you're traveling, you can have another service, Starlink for RVs as you're traveling, especially if you're going to go somewhere for more than 2 months and you don't want to take the chance on Starlink changing your service address. Also, as you're traveling, when you get back home, you can pause your Starlink for RV service plan until the next time you need it, and you're going to save a lot of money that way. So with all that said, what does this really mean? You're going to want Starlink for RVs if you need in-motion internet access, and this would be with the flat high performance antenna, or if you want the ability to pause and unpause your service, that's Starlink for RVs. Starlink residential plus portability, you're going to want this if you have to have priority access at a certain location. Again, that would be residential plus portability. Now there is one last thing to be aware of before you order a service plan. As of today, you can update a residential plan to an RV plan, but you can't go the other way around. You can't change an RV plan to a residential plan. So make sure you think about this before you order your plan and your hardware. Hopefully you were able to get something out of this video. I know we had a lot of fun researching this information for you as well. But if you think I missed something or you have any questions, any comments, leave them below. We're always more than happy to answer all comments and all questions. Remember, always live life to the fullest.